April 2nd, 2011, Tempe, Arizona. Belief Behind Bars, an event to call for action the world community to support the human rights in Iran and to speak up on behalf of the 7 Baha'i leaders currently imprisoned. The Baha'i Campus Association of ASU, in collaboration with the local spiritual assembly of the Baha'is of Glendale, held an event as part of a campaign to bring awareness about the human rights violation and persecution of Baha'is in Iran. Mr. Randolph Dobbs from the Regional Baha'i Council explained the purpose of the event and the reason for the imprisonment of 7 Baha'i leaders in Iran.
This program is about human rights, and it's about the persecution of the Baha'is in Iran. And in that country, the actual formal practice of the Baha'i faith was banned. And informally, the Baha'is have tried to maintain their spiritual lives. And assisting them were 7 volunteers. These 7 people were asked to try to take care of the affairs of the Baha'is in lieu of formal Baha'i institutions. These 7 people were rounded up in the middle of the night about 3 years ago and put in prison. And they were charged with various crimes, trumped up charges like spying for the state of Israel or spreading corruption on earth and various things.
The first speaker of the event was Dr. Paul Eppinger. He is the director of the Arizona Interfaith Movement. He discussed the importance of unity and harmony between all religions.
This kind of an event is incredibly important because of the religious animosity that is going on all around the world. Everywhere you look, there's religious and political animosity going on. So that, for example, Israel and Palestine, there's that thing going on. China and the Dalai Lama, the United States and anti-Muslims here in our nation. And of course, the focus of our time here tonight is the Baha'is who are imprisoned there in Iran. This is a time for us to act. Dr. Hans Küng, great German theologian, some time ago said there will never be peace among the nations until there is peace between the religions. There will never be peace between the religions until there is understanding between the religions. There will never be understanding between the religions until there is dialogue between the religions. That's what we need, my friends. That's why we are here together. I happen to be a Christian, but that's why we're here, for us to dialogue, in some way come to a new understanding of life and truth.
Mr. Iraj Kamalabadi, a brother to one of the prisoners, spoke about the persecution of Baha'is in Iran and the situation of the 7 Baha'i leaders who were unjustly charged and sentenced. During his speech, he encouraged the global communities and individuals to speak up in support of these 7 innocent prisoners.
I am the brother of one of the 7 members of the ad hoc committee in Iran administering to the Baha'is of the Baha'i community of Iran. We need to understand, why are the Baha'is persecuted in Iran? When the Baha'i faith started, the country of Iran was going through a state of decadence with widespread corruption within the government, widespread corruption within the Islamic clergy, and widespread usage of opium. So in those dark days, when the Baha'i faith came, it brought new hope to initially the people of Iran that were deprived of many very basic rights. Now, today in Iran, the first 3 symptoms are still there: state of decadence, corruption within the government and clergy. But to that, now we've become more modernized. There's widespread of drug addiction. According to the UN report, Iran has the highest usage of drug, and to that has been added widespread prostitution, some 635% increase in the past 20 to 30 years. Now there is public unrest because of the disputed June 12th presidential election, and then the outcome of that has been gross violation of human rights, with people having peaceful demonstrations within different cities in Iran. A secret blueprint from the government came to light that the government has plans of systematically getting rid of the Baha'i community in Iran. And following that, there were so many different plots by the government, a government that is supposed to be vouchsafing the well-being of its citizens, is itself plotting to annihilate a peaceful religious group that have nothing but the wish of serving their country and serving their fellow human being. Now here there are 7 members of the Baha'i community who serve the Baha'i community, the 300,000 Baha'i community in Iran. And I would like to go through each one of them. Mr. Tisfam, 37 years old, optometrist. Mr. Tawakkoli, 59 years old, social worker. Mr. Khanjani, the oldest member, 77 years old, a factory owner. Mr. Naimi, 49 years old, an industrialist. Mr. Razai, 53 years old, an agricultural engineer. My sister, Fariba Kamalabadi, 48 years old, a psychologist. And last but not least, Mrs. Sabet, 57 years old, a school principal. The law offices of Shirin Ebadi, who was the 2003 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, accepted to represent them. So after she announced that, the government threatened her life. They confiscated her Nobel Peace Prize. They put in prison her colleague, Mr. Sultani, who was representing the 7 Baha'is. Then they put her sister in jail. Then they raided her office. And then she went on to say that she has examined the case of the Baha'is and there is no single shred of evidence against them. So she demanded that if justice is served, they all need to be released immediately. American, Iranian, Japanese journalist was in prison in Iran, and she happened to be in the same cell as the 2 ladies, my sister and Mahvash. She says that her life was so positively touched by these 2 selfless Baha'i ladies that they were a source of emotional support and inspiration to them. She calls these 2 angels in prison. Now, after they received their sentence, they were transferred to this new prison in Karaj, just outside of Tehran, Gohardash prison, which is famous for housing the dangerous murderers and drug dealers and thieves, and not just political prisoners, with inhumane and deplorable conditions, as many people have witnessed. So they are now officially charged and serving a 20-year sentence. They have been housed in this women ward with 170 of most dangerous criminals. They have used their love for humanity. They have used their knowledge of psychology and education to educate and give counseling to these deprived people. They all have developed psychological problems and have given them such a genuine love. So what has happened, 170 people that are the most dangerous criminals, they have been changed. These are dangerous criminals. Their lives have been transformed. So therefore, cultural cleansing is not only limited to Iran, but many countries of the world have experienced this. I would like to share this quotation with you from a pastor, a Lutheran pastor, Martin Niemöller, which is very moving. In Germany, they first came for the gypsies, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a gypsy. Then they came for the Bolsheviks, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Bolshevik. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics. I didn't speak up then because I was a Protestant. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up. So in closing, the House and the Senate have a new resolution that they introduced to the floor on March 1st. House Resolution 134, Senate Resolution 80. Please contact your representatives, your senators, with letters and ask them to either co-sponsor this or vote positively so that it would pass. The message is to condemn the government of Iran for its state-sponsored persecution of its Baha'i minority and its continued violation of international covenants on human rights. So in brief, the Baha'is in Iran are being persecuted solely because they are Baha'is. And please, do not be indifferent. Do not be silent, like Martin Niemöller.
Dr. Farhad Sabatan from the International Baha'i Community explained about the persecution of Baha'is and other minorities in Iran and the importance of recognizing the diversity of individuals' opinions and beliefs by the existing government.
By thanking Dr. Eppinger for what he said. Those three words are very important for all of us. Understanding, respect, and support. If we had only the first one, I think we would be in a much better shape than we are right now. With deep regret, none of these concepts exist with the Iranian government today. There is no understanding of any religion. The persecution of the Baha'is is not the only violation of human rights in Iran. Jews, Christians, Zoroastrian, Sufis, Baluchis, Kurds, women, many others are also being persecuted. And there is no understanding of who they are and what they say. There is no respect for diversity of opinions and for the variety of different kinds of people who are in Iran. And there is certainly no support, again with deep regret, what the great Buddha has said. And he said, we should all try to help each other. But if we cannot help each other, can we please not hurt each other? At the outset, I must add that even though we are here talking about the Baha'is, I really would like to talk on behalf of all Iranians, all of those who are prisoners of conscience, all of those whose beliefs are behind bars. And they are certainly not limited to the Baha'is. There are intellectuals, there are professors, there are journalists, there are university students, there are women, there are attorneys, all of whom are persecuted, imprisoned, tortured, interrogated, simply because they have a different opinion, and simply because the Iranian government does not recognize that diversity. The persecution of the Baha'is actually started in the 19th century, as was mentioned. More than 20,000 Baha'is and Babis were put to death. And this trend continued. However, it was somewhat ameliorated during the reign of the Pahlavi regime. The persecution was not as intense as before. However, there was still some degree of animosity against the Baha'is. For example, Hujjatul Islam Muhammad Taghi Falsafi, a clergy at that time, went on national TV calling for eradication of the Baha'is. And it was through his decree that the army of the Shah went and destroyed the Baha'i center in Tehran. It was about the same time that another organization was created in Iran, the Hujjatiyya organization, whose sole purpose was to destroy the Baha'i faith in Iran. Maybe 6, 7, maximum 10 years ago, when this organization resurfaced, and I'm sorry to say that the Iranian president and many others are part of this organization, the Hujjatiyya organization. Early days of the revolution, more than 200 Baha'is were killed. Many were imprisoned. thousands of Baha'is lost their homes. Hundreds of thousands of Baha'is lost their pensions, my parents among them. Many students were deprived of access to higher education. Because I monitor the Iranian media for instances of violation of human rights, I can tell you with certainty that there is not one day that I do not see at least one or two newspaper articles or activities by the Muslim clergies in Iran against the Baha'is and against other minorities, but especially the Baha'is. So it is, there are television programs, there are newspaper articles, there are dispatches of individuals who go to the pulpit and they incite the multitude against the Baha'is. I'd like to pause for a moment about this particular charge of espionage that virtually all Baha'is who are arrested are accused of. First of all, there are not 7 Baha'is in the Iranian prison. There are about 80. Now, what exactly is the root of that? It's because the world administrative body of the Baha'i faith, along with the most sacred and holy shrines of the Baha'i faith, are situated in Israel. And why is that? That's because at the time of the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century, 2 Islamic empires, Ottoman Empire and the Persian Empire, and the Iranian government, they exiled Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, and his family to the farthest region of the Ottoman Empire, at that time the penal colony of Akka. This was 80 years before the formation of the State of Israel. And yet the Iranian government accuses Baha'is to be spies of Israel. Not because they have found any evidence. They have yet to present a shred of evidence about Baha'is being spies or have been engaged in any kind of espionage activity. It hasn't been because they have found any kind of a spying equipment. An 80-year-old man was charged as a spy. This poor man had never left his village, and he was executed on the charge of being a spy. Simply because Baha'is have their administrative body and holy places in Israel. If we accept that logic, then all the Muslims of the world are spies. Why? Because the second most holy mosque of Muslims is in Jerusalem. And by that same token, all the Shias of Iraq and Iran, they're also spies of Iraq, because 2 of the holiest shrines of Shia Islam are in Najaf and Karbala. So it's this juxtaposition of, a geographic accident, if you will, of Baha'is being in these countries by no means could be construed as the fact that there's being spies. And all of this is primarily because the Baha'is believe that a new religion has come, which believes in all the other religions, that mankind is one, and that we all need to respect human rights. The Baha'i faith in the 19th century declared the rights of people. And in fact, in the early part of the 20th century, one of the Baha'i leaders, Shoghi Effendi, wrote to Baha'i institutions outlining specifically different provisions of human rights. This is 30 years before the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was created. So it's a religion that is growing very rapidly in Iran, and because there are no priests and clergies in the Baha'i faith, apparently that's not good for the government who is being run by the clergies. We Baha'is long to see a day when all these diverse individuals of all backgrounds, of all religions, come together to build a new society. And it is my hope tonight that with the limited time that we have had, we get a glimpse of how we can work together. And I cannot re-emphasize the words of my colleague who said earlier, we need to work together in order to be able to eradicate these type of prejudices. The Iranian people are not against the Baha'is. It is only a minority who is seeking power and who wants to retain power, who is unfortunately the great violators of human rights. Let's hope for that day.
Good evening. We're at the Belief Behind Bars event in Tempe, Arizona. Thank you for watching BWTV. How are you tonight, sir?
Very well, thank you.
How did you enjoy the program?
It was a wonderful, one of the best program I attended at ASU today, and it was learning experience about the Baha'i situation in Iran, and especially government of Iran is persecuting the numbers of the Baha'is in different way and different method, which is a violation of the human rights. We learn about that tonight.
Is there anything you learned here today that you didn't know before?
Of course, I knew about the persecution of the Baha'is, but tonight was deeper understanding how conniving is the government of Iran is doing this type of persecution for the Baha'is of Iran.
Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much for asking me.
How are you doing tonight?
Very well, thank you.
Did you enjoy the program?
Very much. It was very well done program.
Is there anything that you learned new here tonight?
Yeah, there are some things I learned new about the Yaran.
What do you think about the persecution of the Baha'is of Iran?
It's unjust. There's no consideration for the human rights at all, and not just towards the Baha'is. I think it happened to all the minorities and even the Iranian people in general.
What can we do about it?
For me, I think prayers and stand up for our rights as we can in this country. At the same time, we can also write to our senator and to voice our opinions, and hopefully the U.S. will put pressure in Iran, and hopefully our voice will be heard. And at the same time, all we can do is continue to have faith and practice our, belief system, and hopefully by our actions, we can somehow transform the people around us, and that will get support from other groups of religious groups or other friends.
Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you doing tonight?
I'm excited. I'm doing good. Thank you.
All your performances were very inspiring.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
Well, what's your feeling about the situation of the Baha'is in Iran?
I feel like history is repeating itself. It could happen anywhere. It's happening there en masse, not just to the Baha'is. Although this, the saying goes that if you don't do something, sooner or later it's going to get around to you. So I'm just inspired to write letters and encourage other people to write letters and to continue, being about the business of making this a better world, and freedom and peace and love and justice for everyone. And it's inspiring.
Is there anything that you learned tonight different from something you didn't know before?
Details. I learned more details, and I didn't realize that they had reinstituted the 20-year sentence, which is just horrible. They intend for them to die in prison. That seems to be the way that the Iranian government has done things in the past, and I'm hoping that there is a miracle and that we can get them released, and that God will be merciful, and then in that mercy, then people may be inspired, and maybe the government will change its heart. That's what I'm praying for.
What can people do who are watching this if they want to take some sort of action for the human rights in Iran?
They can write letters to their congressmen and to their senators. The measures that they were talking about in this program, they should write. They can go to the Baha'i websites, the national website. They have sample letters that they can use. Whatever they can do to address the issue in their church services, in their synagogues, in their mosques, in their Baha'i communities. Whatever that you can do to make your neighborhood a better place, to take those inspirations from the ladies that are in prison. We got stories from the 2 women who are in prison that they call the angels, to see that one special thing in a person and ignore all of the bad stuff and just focus on the positive qualities in the individuals. Those kinds of characteristics and character development those are the things that those leaders are doing. They're growing in the place that they are planted. They're planted in a deep, dark, nasty, dirty prison, and they are still blossoming.
You're a Baha'i yourself?
Yeah.
If there was one thing that you could share with the whole world that don't know about the Baha'i faith, what would that be?
Know about it. And if you don't become a Baha'i, be a friend. And if you read Baha'u'llah's writings, you will be inspired to be a better Christian or a better Jew or a better Muslim or a better Buddhist, or and get to know your fellow co-religionists, that we're all in this together. And through the unification of the religions, if we can all work together, we can do a lot. It's going to take the unity of the religions to make a big, powerful statement in the changing of the way that the world is run, and how the ordinary, everyday person can benefit from all of the riches that are on the planet if the religions come together. So.
Very, very enlightening. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, both of you, for your inspiring talks and all of the information that have actually enlightened all of us tonight. What do you think is the most important thing that somebody leaving here tonight should learn?
It is my hope that the participants here tonight got a better understanding of the human rights challenges in Iran, not only for Baha'is, but for all Iranians who, simply because they think differently or they believe differently, or they are simply because they are of a different background or ethnic background, that they are treated harshly, their rights are violated, and they are becoming like a second or third degree citizen. So I'm hoping that people who were here tonight left with a better consciousness of what human rights mean and how important it is, so that they can act on it.
Now, your sister is one of the 7 in prison, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Has she ever shared anything with you that she'd like to share with the world? Anything?
Well, I do get a chance to talk to her occasionally, and their wish is for the world to know that they're suffering because of their belief. But if that's what it takes for humanity to become united and for people to love each other and understand each other and help each other grow, that's basically what they're happy with. Of course, they rather be free and serve humanity with absolute freedom, but if that is not possible under these conditions, they are willing to go under harsh times so that their plight would be heard by all humanity all over the world.
Now, you've served in various agencies in the United Nations, is that correct?
Actually, I'm the spokesperson for the Baha'i International Community, which of course is a non-governmental organization at the United Nations. So that's what my job and function is.
Wonderful. What is the international community being urged to do by the Baha'is to approach this scenario?
Well, the international community, as many, in fact, people of conscience have done, the international community is being encouraged to raise their call, to not remain silent about the atrocities that they see in Iran, and of course in many other countries where human rights are being violated, because our silence and our indifference essentially is an implicit endorsement of what we see happening in these countries. We do not want to endorse it. We want everyone in the world to know that what is being done to the Iranians and to the Baha'is and to the Christians and to the Zoroastrian and to the Sufis are being watched. The Iranian government is being watched, and that none of their actions is acceptable, and that the call of the people of the world is for them to stop this persecution of anyone who thinks differently, who believes differently.
What is the danger to the Baha'is in Iran and also all the people of the world if this issue continues to be ignored?
Well, the danger is that when we violate human rights, essentially we are violating probably the most fundamental and the most basic value that is shared in all humanity. Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a universal value. Essentially, it means we are all one and we need to be treated one. And therefore, if we don't pay attention to it, there may come a time that our rights will be violated. And we hope we never get to that point. We hope that the consciousness of the oneness of humankind and the value of humanity reaches to everyone's mind so that we all arise and go try to remedy anywhere we see violation of human rights.
Now, you shared a story about the prison circumstances and how the prisoners have, in many ways, come to love their fellow prisoners. These Baha'is are, in some way, beacons of hope. Is that something that everybody in the world can learn from? What do you think?
Of course, everyone can learn from this, because their very lives are exemplary in what human beings can be in terms of beacons of hope, in terms of spreading love and unity and service, pure-hearted service to human beings, because we are all one. So we all can learn from that. And this is a story that should not go untold. Everyone in the world needs to know about this. And I hope that people learn that we can all live together in absolute peace and harmony.
Thank you both for standing up for human rights and for the truth.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.
Be generous in prosperity and thankful in adversity. Be worthy of the trust of thy neighbor. And look upon him with a bright and friendly face. Be a treasure to the poor, an admonisher to the rich, an answer to the cry of the needy. Riding on the shoulder of a dove, the dove upon his shoulder said he was the one that teaches how to love. Muhammad came out of the desert sun, stayed out there just as long as he could. The Maker gave him water from love.
Living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion. Who needs it if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do? Imagine all the people living life in peace.
Lord, unite all, let the religions agree and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family and the whole earth as one home. May they all live together in perfect harmony.
For further information of the violation of human rights and the situation of the 7 Baha'i leaders imprisoned in Iran, please refer to the official websites of the international Baha'i community.